for the recording to start, then yeah, I think perfect. I think the recording have now started. So I want to just take this time to welcome you all to the RCD workshop on the ethical use of ChatGPT. So I think a lot, in this era of generative AI, we have had a lot of tools that are surfacing. Each and every day we see new tools that are, being developed or either being brought forward that we as scholars have also in some way defined the way that we do things. So we look forward to great insights in this workshop where most the most important thing that I think the team captured is the ethical use of ChatGPT. We use it, but sometimes we do not use it in a manner that conforms to the ethical conduct that guides us as a researcher. So I'm Dr. Gabriel Monyera from the Postgraduate School, the Research Capacity Development Unit, and I'll be the one moderating the session for today. So before I move on, I just want to remind you once again that this session is being recorded. And also, I want to thank all the participants for taking their time to join us. And as I have already said, we also thank our facilitator for his efforts with preparing and facilitating the session for today. These are some, housekeeping rules, that will just guide us as we move along or progress with the session. If you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to raise your hand if you would like to speak, or you can type the question in the chat box. Then I will bring it to the attention of the presenter. Also, that depends as well on the preference of the facilitator, whether you would want questions to be asked during the session or reserved for the open discussion segment or the question and answer segment at the end of the presentation. Like I've said, the session is recorded and the presentation slides will be requested from the presenter. Both the recording and the slides will be uploaded to our Moodle communities by the end of the week. And also a feedback survey will be sent during the session on the chat section. And we kindly ask you to fill in the feedback survey. That is where we also gain insights on whether the workshop was useful, and also for our future preparation as well. We also use it to provide kind words to the facilitator for their hard work and effort. By completing the feedback survey, it also ensures that you receive a certificate of attendance to this workshop. We remind you that we launched the RCDMS, the Research Capacity Development Management System, last month, and we are gradually migrating to this new system. So, this is the system where you are going to be able to register for workshops, research writing consultations, and also stay updated of the RCD events and services all in one place. And we have come to label it as a one-stop access for all the RCD events and services. And to register to utilize this system, you can access it through the U-Link under the Services tab, or by visiting the rcdms.uj.ac.za. That is www.rcdms.uj.ac.za. So with that, I would like to introduce our facilitator for today, Prof. Benjamin Smart. And allow me to read the bio of Prof. Benjamin Smart in your hearing. So Prof. Smart is a director and co-founder of the Center for Philosophy of Epidemiology, Medicine and Public Health at the University of Johannesburg, and associate professor of philosophy at the University of Johannesburg. He is author of concepts and courses in the philosophy of disease and a capacities approach to public health. That is forthcoming. That is expected this year in 2025, and also a co-author with Prof. Olad Daman of Possession in Public Health, Informatics, and Data Science. In addition to his work in philosophy of medicine and metaphysics, ProfSmart has published peer-reviewed articles and opinion pieces in the scholarship of teaching and learning. He was awarded his PhD by the University of Nottingham in 2012, lectured at the University of Birmingham for 3 years, and he has worked at UJ since 2015. He is secretary of the Philosophy of Medicine Roundtable and on the editorial board of the journal Philosophy of Medicine. He was first author on a report on the indirect health effects of COVID-19 interventions in South Africa, commissioned by the Center for Global Development. ProfSmart currently is co-investigator on a British academic project entitled Integrating Evidence for Contextualized Public Health Policy, Lessons from South Africa. So I think from his bio, we can see that ProfSmart possesses a wealth of knowledge, and we are happy that he is with us today to facilitate the session for today. And we look forward to the insights, great insights that we are going to receive from you, ProfSmart. And with this, I'm delighted now to hand over to you. I will stop sharing, and then you can share your slides and lead us from here henceforth. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Before I move on to my slides, I'd just like to welcome you all, especially those who don't actually have to be here, those who are here by their own volition. Thank you for attending. So what I'm going to do in this talk is essentially provide you with a selection of prompts, because a lot of AI use, or in particular large language model use these days, is all about prompts, the instructions you give it. And so I've developed 9 or 10 useful prompts that can help you write essays. So this is really all about using large language models. I've said ChatGPT, but I actually don't think ChatGPT is the best one to use. So we'll talk about that a bit more as well. But a selection of prompts that will help you in particular research, but to an extent also write your essays. Just to give you some kind of sense of the landscape at the moment, the media is flooded with negative articles on the use of large language models in essay writing, particularly in the humanities. And that's largely because of the extent to which some students are using it to cheat. And obviously it's a tool that can very easily be used to cheat. Now, some people in the faculty, I'm heading a working group for the faculty on the use of AI in teaching and learning, and within this working group there's a sort of diversity of opinions. There are people like me that think that there's a place for the use of large language models and similar technologies, but there's also quite a large cohort who just think that AI should be completely excluded. It should be entirely banned. Students shouldn't be able to use it in any capacity at all in their work. Now, I'm against that latter view. I chair this sort of semi-committee type thing. So we're taking on all opinions, but I'm against that view for 2 reasons. One is that it's just inevitable. I mean, there's just no way of stopping students from using AI. So even if the position of the faculty and of the university was that students aren't allowed to use ChatGPT, they're not allowed to use Perplexity.ai, they're not allowed to use any of these large language models, I'm afraid that's not going to stop it. And so I think a much better approach is to do what we're going to do today, which is to work out how students can use these technologies in an ethical way. Now, the thing is that unethical use does get picked up. And so it's extremely important to, and I don't talk about this much in this talk today, but it's extremely important to understand what unethical use of large language models amounts to. you know, when it's plagiarism. And I'll briefly address that, but mostly I'm going to focus on giving you some prompts that you can use to help you write your essays. I'll also go through some things that these large language models sort of purport to be able to do, but aren't very good at it. And I think it's also worth sharing that, because then you can just avoid using it in this way. Okay, so now I'm going to share my slides and probably disappear from your screens, I'd imagine. Let me switch my camera off. Okay. Can everyone see that slide? Just give me a thumbs up. It doesn't look, there's not anything in the way. I have a hand from RR and thumbs up from other people. The hand's gone down. Okay, all right. So let's get going. Okay, so this is ChatGPT. Now, you're probably aware that there are various versions of ChatGPT. This is the free one, but there's also versions that you can pay for, and of course, there's lots of other AI large language models that do similar things to ChatGPT these days. Perplexity.ai and DeepSeek and Jenny.ai and all of these kinds of things. It's worth bearing in mind what these things are, okay, and to some extent how they work. I don't have time to go into all that today, but it's worth bearing in mind that just because ChatGPT says it, especially the free version, doesn't make it true. In fact, in the case of ChatGPT, it very often isn't true. These models are essentially designed to, they're predictive models. You ask a question, then it predicts the most likely next word in a sentence, and then based on the previous text, it predicts what's most likely to come up. And essentially what you end up with sometimes is a bunch of material that's just not true at all. ChatGPT famously has a propensity to provide references that aren't real. You know, it'll say something very plausible like "Smart, 1982, How to Write a Good Philosophy Essay, published by Rowman and Littlefield," right? But you know, that citation doesn't actually refer to something that's real. Okay, so that's the first thing. Bear in mind that what comes out of ChatGPT and other similar large language models isn't necessarily true, and very often isn't. So always double check everything that you take. Don't take something from a large language model to be true. You then have to do your own research to make sure that what it's saying bears some resemblance to reality. The second thing to bear in mind is the biases that these things hold. Okay, you know, they're based on very complex algorithms, and they're intentionally designed with certain biases. So if you ask DeepSeek, for example, which is a large language model developed by the Chinese or in China, and if you ask DeepSeek about what happened in Tiananmen Square, it will just say, "Oh, I've no idea what you're talking about. Please ask another question," right? Because of the data it's been trained on. There was no reference to the atrocities in Tiananmen Square because the Chinese government suppressed that information. And that's every bit as true of the American designed large language models as it is of the Chinese. So also bear that in mind. These are very serious limitations. Okay. And finally, bear in mind a sort of inequality that's being built into the system. Okay, so this ChatGPT 3.5, the free one, is very poor in comparison to the paid-for versions. Okay, I mean, there's no way of getting around that unless you can afford the paid-for versions. Maybe you can get free tests of ChatGPT 4 or something like that. But also bear in mind that there's quite a large discrepancy in the quality of these models. Okay, so a warning before I get into all of these prompts that I'm going to offer. And as we go through, I recommend that you write down the prompts, okay, word for word. I've spent some time developing these prompts, so you can either this is being recorded. I imagine it'll be shared. You could probably look through it again, but at some point it's worth taking note of the prompts. But first, a warning. Like I said, my aim is to provide some guidelines on how AI can be used ethically, but there are many ways in which it can be used unethically. And the first thing to bear in mind is not to abuse these large language models. And the obvious thing is plagiarism, right? My department, I haven't personally had any students that have been and found themselves in trouble for this, but largely because I've caught my students before they've submitted their work. I mean, you can read something written by AI and know that it's been written by AI. They just have a certain way of writing that's very obvious. So the first concern is that if you do this, you almost certainly will get caught. Now, what's happening at the moment, just to give you some idea, is that because there's software you can use like ChatGPT 0 that provides you with some kind of probability of that work being generated by AI. Now at UJ, they've taken that software away from lecturers, and it can't be used as evidence in a plagiarism committee, or at least I've been led to believe that. I don't know. I don't sit on these plagiarism committees. I don't know whether that's true, but that's what I've been told. I think that's true. But that doesn't really help, because what happens is the dissertations and essays and PhDs and so on, they get sent to external examiners, and those external examiners these days are all running the essays that come to them through the software, and when they get suspicious, and they very quickly get suspicious when the work has no grammatical errors, writes in this very kind of American way, and so on and so forth. And what happens is the external examiners just refuse to give the essay a grade, because they just say, I don't believe that this was written by the student. I mean, I'm either giving this 0 or no mark at all. So it's really not in your interests. You're going to get caught. But of course, more importantly, people are here for an education. If you're using large language models to write your essays for you, then you're not learning anything. So what's the point of even being at the University of Johannesburg if you're going to do this? So I think rule number 1 is just don't ever even contemplate copying and pasting responses from large language models and presenting its outputs as your own work, unless you're just using it to copy edit your own work. I'll come back to that as one way of using ChatGPT ethically a little bit later on. Okay, so don't ask questions, get your answers from ChatGPT and then copy and paste them. I mean, it's a pretty obvious thing to say, but unfortunately, lots of students around the country have been doing this, and it's turning into a bit of a crisis. We've got a plague of plagiarism. I think the fact that you're sat in this session tells me that you're not interested in doing that anyway. So I'm likely preaching to the converted here, but worth the warning anyway. And secondly, listen to instructions from your lecturers and supervisors. If they say don't use AI, don't use AI. We're still in the process of, this is relatively new technology, and we're still in the process of developing university-wide policies. Some lecturers are happy for students to use large language models, others less so. If your lecturer explicitly says, don't use AI, try not to do that. Try not to use it. Okay, so now on to the more positive stuff. How to ethically use ChatGPT in your essay writing. So there are a number of ways you can do this. Not so many of them are actually involve the writing process. Obviously, if you're getting ChatGPT to do your writing, then that's unethical. It's just plagiarism. But that's not to say that ChatGPT and other similar large language models can't be useful. And they can be useful in various contexts. Understanding academic texts that are that you might otherwise find impenetrable. You know, maybe they're written in complex or old language, and it's it's tricky for you. So you can use ChatGPT to help understand the text, to help develop your own views and enhance your arguments, to help understand key concepts that you might not otherwise understand, to help plan your essay as a copy editing service, and to provide feedback on your essays. All of these things are perfectly ethical, in my view. Okay, so now I move on to the actual prompts. Okay, so the first one's to do with understanding. Please simplify the following passage from, and then you insert the reference. Where's the article come from, and then you copy and paste the passage. And I have here an example. Ask ChatGPT, please simplify the following passage from Bors's 2011 article, Concepts of Health and Disease. And then the quote. As for general internal issues about health, some arise in ordinary somatic medicine. Is normal aging with its countless functional deficits really normal? And if so, does that make it wrong to prevent or treat if we can? Is whatever raises the risk of disease itself a disease, as seems to be assumed in current diagnoses, such as hypercholesteremia, hypertension, based solely on risk factors? Regarding gene therapy, should we accept the popular bioethical view that it should be aimed only at diseases, not at enhancement? And if so, how do we draw this distinction? Very generally, is health purely a negative concept, the absence of disease, or can there be positive health? Okay, so that's a quote from the text that you may have found, or that a student may have found difficult to understand on first reading. Okay. And then ChatGPT responds. In this passage, Bors is discussing various questions about health and disease. He asks whether normal aging is actually normal and whether it is wrong to try and prevent or treat it. He also questions whether something that increases the risk of disease should be considered a disease itself, as some current medical diagnoses suggest. Bors brings up the ethical debate around gene therapy and whether it should be used for treating diseases only or for enhancing physical abilities. Finally, Bors wonders whether simply the absence of disease or whether it be a positive concept of health. Okay, so there we go. That's the response. It simplifies the more complex original version into language that might be a little more accessible to people. Okay, so there's your first prompt. It literally just puts the language of the original text into plainer, simple language to help you understand. Now, it doesn't always get it perfect, but it's pretty good. I suggest that whenever you use large language models in this context, you make use of your instructors, your lecturer, your tutors, if you have tutors, this kind of thing, to work out whether that is a good interpretation of the original text. But in my experience, generally speaking, ChatGPT and even better, Perplexity.ai. I'm a big fan of Perplexity.ai, largely because it's trained on a lot of academic literature and it has access to the academic literature. So Perplexity.ai does a good job of this. Okay, so another possible way of using large language models for understanding is to make use of its capacity to translate into languages other than English. Okay, so many people at the University of Johannesburg, for many people at the University of Johannesburg, English is not their first language. And you can actually ask ChatGPT to translate passages from one language into another. So if you're an isiZulu speaker, you could ask ChatGPT to translate that same passage from English into isiZulu. I put this up here as a warning as much as anything else. Now, here's the translation. Now, I don't speak isiZulu, but people who do have explained to me that this is a very poor translation. Okay, and the correct meaning of the previous paragraph doesn't come across in a particular way, and that's largely because the way large language models work is to look at individual words and then directly translate them into words in another language. But very often, one word in English might translate into multiple words, multiple possible words in another language, and it effectively picks the wrong one. Also, the syntax of languages are different, and so English is a rather strange language in many ways. And when you try to translate word for word into another language, it just doesn't work out. So for the time being, I would recommend that students don't use this. Although, if you're completely stuck and you want to give it a try, then it might be worth a try just to give it a go. Apparently, it is getting better at translation, and I would imagine that in the not too distant future, much better translations are available. But certainly, if you're using the free version of these LLMs, using it for language translation isn't a fantastic plan. But you can always give it a go and then see what you find. Okay, now moving on to developing your view. Okay, so this is all in the planning stage of your essay, really. So you have an idea and you want to defend a certain position. Any good academic knows that understanding your own view and not understanding the views of others makes you very poor at defending your own view. Okay, so if you are a Marxist, for example, and you don't understand the argument supporting capitalism, then you're going to be a very poor defender of Marxism, and vice versa. As Einstein once said, he who knows only his side of the argument knows very little of that. So it's a good idea to engage with particularly other people, if you have the opportunity, other smart people that hold the opposite view to you. But we're talking about AI use here, and in this context, you can use AI to be your interlocutor. Okay, that is to say, I want to defend position A, and there's a whole bunch of people that defend position B. So I want to find out what the people defending position B would have to say about my position A. So prompt 3 is this: please debate with me on, and then even say topic, adopt the position of, and then so you're instructing ChatGPT to adopt the position of your interlocutor, your opponent, and then say, I'll start. And then you insert your opening statement and your first argument. And then always say, keep your responses short at the end, because if you don't say keep your responses short, it's less of a discussion that you'll be having with ChatGPT, and it'll just provide everything that it can think of, as it were, in that one response. It'll give you a few pages, but you kind of want it to respond to your argument and keep it short, and then have a conversation. Okay, that's the idea here. You want to have a conversation with ChatGPT. So, for example, you ask ChatGPT, please debate with me. My examples all come from philosophy because as much as I work in public health and medicine and this kind of field, I'm at heart a philosopher. I do these things through a philosophical lens. So please debate with me on the problem of evil. Adopt the position of the theist. I'll start. A benevolent, omnipotent, omniscient God cannot exist, since those characteristics are incompatible with all the evil in the world. Keep your responses short. Okay, so that's my initial prompt. There's somebody waiting in the lobby if they can be let in. Maybe I'll click admit. There we go. It's blocking my thing. And then ChatGPT responds, as a theist, I respectfully disagree with your statement. God can still exist even if evil exists, as it is the result of human free will. The existence of evil can serve a greater purpose and provide opportunities for growth and development. Okay, so you see ChatGPT has provided a counterexample, right? A response to my initial position that I may not have been aware of, and this is how you can sort of help develop your essays, because when you're writing your essays, you need to provide arguments against your own view and then respond to those views. Okay, so I continued in this discussion. I continued the discussion with ChatGPT. I said, well, how are natural disasters the result of free will? Keep your responses short. Always include that clause, keep your responses short. And ChatGPT responds, natural disasters are not the result of human free will, but rather a consequence of natural processes that govern the physical world. So then you think, okay, but God is capable of miracles. Why wouldn't God always provide a miraculous intervention to stop the suffering? Keep your responses short. And then ChatGPT responds, as a theist, I believe that while God is capable of performing miracles, it does not necessarily mean that God intervenes in every instance of suffering. There may be reasons why God allows suffering to occur, such as providing opportunities for personal growth or testing individuals' faith. Okay, so you see how I'm engaging in a debate with the large language model, and in so doing, helping develop my views and understand the kinds of responses that people are going to come up with when I put forward these kinds of arguments. And all of this will help you develop your arguments for your essay. Okay. This prompt 4, achieves a similar sort of purpose, a similar sort of goal rather, but in a sense does it all at once. Okay, so here we're asking for a Socratic dialogue. A Socratic dialogue, they're called Socratic dialogues because they come from Plato's Republic. Plato wrote in the form of Socratic dialogues where you just have people talking to each other, debating things. Okay, and when you ask for a Socratic dialogue, you're asking for the whole debate in one go. All right. So, for example, this one. Please write a Socratic dialogue debating the need for free higher education in South Africa. Keep each response short. Okay, so if I were writing on decolonizing education, or specifically on free education, provision of free education in South Africa, I might sort of start my research process by asking ChatGPT or any other large language model. Like I say, I recommend Perplexity.ai for a Socratic dialogue. So it responds, sure, here's a Socratic dialogue debating the need for free higher education in South Africa. Do you believe that higher education in South Africa should be free for all? Do you mean completely free with no cost to the student whatsoever? Yes, that's correct. Don't you think that would be financially unsustainable for government and taxpayers? But isn't education a basic human right that should be accessible to everyone regardless of their financial situation? I agree that education is important, but it's also important to consider the practicalities of funding it. Who would pay for it and how would it be funded? The government could increase taxes or redirect funds from other areas to cover the costs of free higher education. But wouldn't that be unfair on those who don't attend university or college? They would be paying higher taxes to subsidize the education of others, and so on. So you read through the Socratic dialogue and you identify each of the arguments for and against these positions. So there are fiscal arguments, it's not sustainable. There's moral arguments based on human rights, and so on and so forth. Okay, so by asking for a Socratic dialogue, you can identify particular arguments, and then you can go back to the previous prompt that I suggested and maybe engage in a debate based on any one of these arguments. So you could debate on the human rights argument, you could debate on the financial sustainability arguments, and so on and so forth. Okay, so asking for a Socratic dialogue is sort of a shortcut to identifying a bunch of little arguments that you would then need to research in greater depth. Okay, so next one, understanding key concepts. So a lot of subjects, particularly in the humanities, are quite heavily laden with jargon and concepts that you really need to get your head around in order to engage in the literature. published articles will often assume a good understanding of what these concepts mean, but particularly as a student or an early career academic, you may not be massively familiar with these important concepts. And so the assumption in the published article that you know what this concept means is not necessarily warranted. Now, of course, academics can't, when they're writing a peer-reviewed article, can't just explain every concept in great detail. The articles would end up being far too long. So they have to make these assumptions. But that makes it quite tricky for you as students, because you can't just read that article and understand everything. You need to actually look at the individual concepts that are being used. And ChatGPT and other large language models like Perplexity.ai can help with that. Okay. So, for example, in philosophy of science, the problem of induction is a big debate, and induction is one of the kinds of concepts that I'm talking about. Everyone just sort of assumes that people know what they're talking about when they mention induction and inductive inferences and so on, but a student might not. So you could ask ChatGPT to please explain the following concept from academic philosophy, induction. So you say, please explain the following concept from academic, and then insert the discipline, philosophy, psychology, economics, whatever you're working on, and then insert the particular concept and wait for its explanation. Now, usually when you do this, it gives quite an extensive answer. Okay. Now, my experience of the free version of ChatGPT is that the answer you get is typically reasonably accurate enough to give you a half decent idea of what's going on, but often not absolutely perfect. Okay, I'm not going to read through this entire page, but briefly speaking, induction is the inference of generalized conclusions from the observation of particular instances, or perhaps predicting what's going to happen next based on what's happened in the past. All right. So it gives an example here. Every crow I've seen is black. Every crow my friend has seen is black. Every crow mentioned in birdwatching books is black. Therefore, based on these specific instances, one might induce the generalization that all crows are black. Okay. Now, of course, the point is that just because all observed crows have been black doesn't necessarily entail that the next crow observed will be black, or that all crows are black. In exactly the same way as if you had a coin with the heads and the tails, and you toss that coin 100 times and it landed heads every time, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to land heads next time. It could just be, it could just be that it turned out heads every time. It's just extremely unlikely to happen, but it's possible. Okay, but here's what I want to highlight. It says here, it is important to note that induction does not provide certainty or absolute proof. Okay, that's true. The conclusions drawn through induction are based on probabilities and the assumption that the future will resemble the past. Actually, that's not entirely true. There are some theories of induction that are based on probabilities, but inductive inferences are not necessarily probabilistic. All right. I'm not going to go into the philosophy of it. I'm not going into the mathematics of it or how induction works. But the point is that this isn't strictly speaking true. And that's what I was trying to highlight at the beginning of this presentation, that not everything ChatGPT will tell you is entirely accurate. Okay, so whilst this, can you please explain the concept from academic philosophy induction? Like it will give you some idea of the point of the concept. You can't necessarily entirely trust exactly what they come out with. And so again, I recommend that you engage with your supervisors, with your lecturers, with your tutors, just to ensure that, what you're relying on is entirely accurate. Okay, now on to planning your essay. Now, I quite like this, particularly for people that are, students or early career academics. You can use large language models to help plan your essays. Now, having a well-structured essay is a fundamental part of getting a good mark. When examiners are looking at your essays, they are interested. They will comment on the structure of it. And in fact, the guidelines for marking will mention the structure of your essay. So it's important that you get this right. Whilst seasoned academics are, very used to writing academic articles, and so the structure kind of comes naturally, that's through habit. You have to learn the habit. And I think that AI can help you develop those habits. So this prompt works quite well for that. Please provide me with an essay plan for a insert academic discipline essay entitled insert essay title, including but not restricted to sections on topic 1, topic 2, topic 3. This essay should defend, and then you insert the view to be defended. So for example, ask ChatGPT, please provide me with an essay plan for an academic philosophy essay entitled Should We Be Dispositional Essentialists About Properties, including but not restricted to sections on David Lewis on properties, John Hyle on properties, Alexander Bird on properties. This essay should defend dispositionalism. Okay, so note a few things. So first of all, you're not just asking it to provide you with an essay plan for the essay title you've been assigned by your supervisor or by the lecturer or whatever the case might be. By the time you get to this point, you've already done a little bit of research. You've read the slides, you've done the essential readings, you know the kinds of thing that you're expected to write on, okay? And you know that you're kind of expected to write on this topic and that topic and so on. These are the kind of arguments that are going to come up. And you need to have already decided what view you're going to defend. You've done the research, you've done the reading, you know what view you're going to defend. Okay. And then it'll come up with an essay plan. Now, actually, I find the ones from perplexity.ai work better. And in fact, you can add to this, please provide relevant references to each of the sections. Okay, and that will give you extra readings to do, which can be very useful. You can't do that with ChatGPT. ChatGPT just makes them up. But if you do it with perplexity.ai, you'll be able to find the readings that they refer to. And in fact, it'll provide you with links to those readings. Okay, and then it provides you with an essay structure, okay? It'll tell you where to write an introduction first and finish with a conclusion, and it'll include all the various different things that you've referred to. And then when you're writing your essay, you should more or less stick to this, okay? You stick to the essay plan. So you keep all the stuff that you're going to write about on Lewis in these 3 sections in this particular order, okay? And then you end up with a well-structured essay that's going to give you better marks than if you just sit down and just write off the top of your head, Keeping an essay well structured is very important for getting high marks in the humanities subjects. Okay, and now copy editing. Okay, so a lot of UJ students, in fact, I could have probably done with this when I was a student, but many people are writing in their second or third language. And of course, when you're writing in your second or third language, your grammar is unlikely to be absolutely spot on, and you're likely to use words that you don't necessarily need to use from time to time. And often you find that people repeat themselves and use unnecessary words and so on and so forth. Okay. Now, for decades, centuries probably, wealthier students and lecturers have had the privilege of being able to employ people to copy edit their work, right? But that's very much been in the past restricted to the wealthy, the kind of people that can find 10,000 Rand in their bank account to pay somebody to get rid of the grammatical mistakes in their work, right? And fish out the errors that they've made. These days, you can use AI to perform that task for you for free, right? You can't do it all at once. You have to do it paragraph by paragraph, and you need to do it in such a way that it doesn't entirely rewrite what you've written to the extent that it's unrecognizable. You also need to check that it continues to say the things that you want to say. These models are not perfect. They might change the meaning of what you wanted to say. But for example, the following prompt works quite nicely. Please copy edit the following section such that it's coherent, well-structured, and redundant words are removed. It should be written in the style of academic philosophy or whatever, using the, and then insert your preferred referencing style, so using the Harvard referencing style, and then you copy and paste the paragraph that you've written, okay? Like I say, you can't do the entire essay at once. It just won't let you do that. Maybe it would if you had the paid-for version. I don't know. I don't have the paid-for version. I've used the paid-for version and it's much better, but I haven't actually tested it for this. But I'm sure you could probably do this with the whole essay. But anyway, it's irrelevant because I imagine most people here don't have the paid version. Okay. So, for example, please rewrite the following section such that it's coherent, well-structured, and unnecessary words are removed. It should be written in the style of academic philosophy using the Harvard referencing system. Thousands of years, philosophers have been wondering whether God exists. However, some have argued that his existence as a benevolent, omniscient, and omnipotent
Prof. Smart. Okay.
Hello,
Prof. Smart, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
All right. We just lost you for a moment.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. So for thousands of years, philosophers have been wondering whether God exists. However, some have argued that his existence as a benevolent, omniscient, and omnipotent being is incompatible with all the evil in the world. And then Smart-2002. If God were all-loving, all-powerful, and knew about all this evil, why wouldn't he prevent it from occurring? Okay, and ChatGPT responds, the questions of God's existence has been a subject of philosophical inquiry for millennia. Nevertheless, some scholars contend that the existence of a benevolent, omniscient, and omnipotent God is incongruous with the evil present in the world, Smart-2002. If God were to be characterized as all-loving, all-powerful, and all-knowing, why would he permit such evil to transpire? Okay, so ChatGPT has taken what I've written, removed all the grammatical errors, replaced some of the unnecessary words, and corrected the referencing style there. Smart-2002 is incorrect for Harvard referencing style. This is Harvard referencing style. So you can see that it will rewrite what you've written in such a way that it still says exactly what you said, but it's acceptable. This is the kind of thing that a copy editor would do for you. I found that sometimes it changes the meaning. So you can additionally add to that prompt, please do not change the meaning. Okay. Please do not change the meaning of my sentences, or please do not change the meaning of the paragraph, something like that. Now, you will find that the biases of ChatGPT come into play when you do this. So if you just say, please copy edit this passage, women are a lot worse drivers than men because they cannot see as well, right? It doesn't simply, no, I appreciate that that's entirely false. I appreciate I've written that precisely because it's entirely false. But the point I'm trying to raise is that ChatGPT doesn't just correct your grammar when you ask it to copy edit things, okay? So ChatGPT's response to this was, women are not worse drivers than men because of their vision. There is no evidence to support the claim that women cannot see as well as men. Such a statement is sexist and inaccurate, okay? So it's been written to reflect a more accurate and respectful view, but at times that's not what you want, okay? Sometimes you don't want AI to be correcting what you said. Now, in this particular instance, of course, ChatGPT is entirely right. But my point is that, if you just say, please copy edit this passage, then you'll end up with AI's ChatGPTs or perplexities or whatever's biases and intentions being imposed on your writing, which is not something you want as an academic. Okay. Now on to the final couple of sections. So on feedback. So please provide constructive feedback on the following section from my academic essay entitled, and then you put in the title of your essay, and you copy and paste it. Okay, so ask ChatGPT, please provide feedback on the following section from academic essay entitled Ethical Academic Concerns over the Threat. Right, so that's copy and pasted. And then you get the feedback here. Oh, I didn't include the feedback that it provided, but when you ask for constructive feedback in this way, it will provide you with a lot of feedback that's not particularly useful. So prompt 8 is prompt 9. Okay, so prompt 8, when you put that in, it will generally tell you that your essay is great. You know, and that's not generally what you're looking for. I mean, it'll give you some certain tips regarding structure and so on, but asking for general feedback isn't such a great plan. This works a lot better though. Prompt 9, please suggest ways in which I can improve the following section from my academic essay entitled, right? And then you insert the title and you copy and paste the section. Okay. When you do that, the large language model will identify particular weaknesses in your essay and suggest ways in which you can improve on those weaknesses. Okay, so it might highlight problems with the grammar, it might highlight problems with the structure, it might highlight some suggestions regarding additional content, and so on and so forth. Okay, and actually, whilst I do think you're significantly better off getting feedback from your lecturer or from your supervisor, the reality is that a lot of supervisors, I mean, I'm supervising 17 postgraduate students at the moment. You know, when my students send me something, and not to mention that, you know, I'm directing a research center, I'm writing books, I'm attending conferences, you know, supervisors are busy. We can't just necessarily provide feedback on the same day. ChatGPT or Perplexity.ai or whatever you want to use can provide you with some useful feedback within seconds. So I think this is actually a very useful prompt, and it's worth paying attention to and amending your essay, in light of sensible comments that it may have provided, and then sending that version to your supervisor. Sending it to your supervisor is vitally important. They're going to spot things that ChatGPT will never spot. But I think it's worth using large language models as a sort of interim supervisor before you send your draft to your supervisor. Okay, so conclusions. AI technologies can be used ethically to enhance your essay writing, particularly in the early stages when you're planning your essay and when you're trying to sort of read the text and understand the text and so on and so forth. You can use ChatGPT and other similar applications for research.
Prof. Smart, can you hear me?
Oh, hello. You missed my last slide, hey?
Okay, yeah, all right. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I just wrapped up. I just said, look, there are various. When did you lose me?
So I'm thinking maybe it's the network on my side. So, but it wasn't showing that I've lost you because I could hear you speaking. Then yeah, so
okay.
yeah, so I think we just lost each other closer to the end.
Right. Okay. Okay. Well, I just wrapped up by saying, look, there's a bunch of ways that you can use ChatGPT to plan your essay and to help with copy editing and to provide feedback. But just be very careful on the plagiarism front. Don't be copying and pasting answers from ChatGPT. That's going to get you into a world of trouble.
Right.
But yeah, now I'm I can stop sharing and switch on my camera.
Okay. All right. Okay. No, thank you so much, Prof. Smart, for it was a very insightful presentation. We are using these tools, but honestly, sometimes we just say anything. We just take a topic, we just paste it there. Then whatever that we get from there, in most cases, like you are saying, I also have an experience with ChatGPT from like a sort of a research perspective. You can write maybe a particular, ask maybe for ideas on a particular text. If you ask for references, the references that you get, they don't exist. Right? Yeah.
But that's not the case with Perplex. I'll just type this one in the
chat
in the
box.
chat here.
Yes, I
So
think that will be very useful.
Perplexity.ai, that's linked to academic journals and useful websites, government websites and so on. And the references you get from Perplexity are accurate, and they typically provide links to the articles.
Thank you so much for that, Professor. And I'm thinking I was happy when you sort of transformed the theme just not to focus on ChatGPT, but on large language models. So I think it's a lot of insights that we have actually learned that from now on, we can be able to apply them not only on ChatGPT only, but also on other large language models like Perplexity, for example, Gemini and others that people are using, and also as researchers that we are trying to use maybe to generate ideas and so forth. Prof, let me open the floor, the floor for any questions that they have for you, or any contributions that they would want to make to the conversation that we had with us today. So for the participants, let me just check whether all your mics are allowed, so that if you have a question, you can just raise your hand, then you can unmute yourself and be able to ask the question. Alternatively, you can also type in the chat box. So I've allowed the mics of all the attendees. So just make sure that when you are not the one speaking, then your mic should be on mute. You only unmute when you have to share something with us, or when you have to ask a question, then by raising virtual hand. Okay, so the floor is open for questions.
No questions. Glad to see I was so clear.
Yeah, so yeah, I still encourage the participants. Any questions for Prof. Smart whilst is here?
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Is that Caroline?
Yes, Prof. I just want to know how do we reference, if you want to reference the information that you got from Perplexity?
In the same way that you would ChatGPT. So usually there's a declaration. So I think there are really two ways of doing it. So what level are you? Sorry.
Masters, I don't even know how to reference ChatGPT. How do you reference any AI resources?
Okay, so first of all, there's when you submit your dissertation, there's an AI declaration form. Okay, so I'll ask your supervisor about that. So be very explicit about all the many ways in which you've used ChatGPT or whatever you've used in your AI declaration form. That there's a propensity to think that expressing all the ways in which you've used it is somehow bad, right? Like an examiner is going to see that and think, oh, well, I'm not going to give this student credit. But in fact, the opposite is true, right? That section enables, the more detailed you are in that section, the less likely you are to get into any trouble. Using large language models these days is a perfectly acceptable way of doing research, bearing in mind the limitations of this software, right? So number one, there's the AI declaration form on your when you submit, and then number two, you can put footnotes in text. Okay, so when there's something very specific related to a particular paragraph that you've written, then add in there precisely what information you got from ChatGPT. I wouldn't recommend that you ever quote it. Okay, don't always
Prof,
just
may I just
always just
interrupt you a bit?
rewrite what ChatGPT has said. Okay, or even better, find out where that information came from. Find the resource. Remember that large language models are trained on data, right? That data exists. It's out there, right? So if the AI refers to some event that happened or refers to some literature, once you've got that information from the large language model, you must find it in the literature and cite that, right? You must cite that. Okay, that's a much better way of doing it. But I would never quote ChatGPT or Perplexity.ai and use its words, right? That's not a good idea. It's more about you should use it more to develop your ideas rather than to get content for your essay, right? You want to get content for your essay from published academic articles, not from large language models, for a bunch of the reasons that I pointed out, including their tendency to be inaccurate.
Thank you so much, Prof, for the answer to the question. I think it was a comprehensive answer. I don't know, Caroline, do you have any follow-up question? You can unmute yourself if you have any follow-up question on that.
Yes, my question is related to where you actually ask AI to just help you develop your view and you find something that might be interesting to add into your essay. Not using it for the sources, just where you might
So in
develop.
that instance, I would just say that you've used it in that way in your AI declaration, right? So that wouldn't come up anywhere in the essay. That wouldn't be a footnote in the essay. That would be part of the AI declaration form, and you would just explain what you did, right? You'd say you engaged with ChatGPT in debates over this topic, and integrated some of the objections ChatGPT raised into your argumentation, right? Following extensive extra research, something like that. I mean, whenever you engage ChatGPT in those ways, you should find out. Like I said, it's not picking those objections up in a vacuum. It's not intelligent. It's not smart. It's not coming up with these objections to your view by itself. When I use the examples from the existence of God debate, the problem of evil, like all of the responses that ChatGPT came up with exist in the literature, right? So what you must do as a student, as an academic, is to then find those responses in the literature, right? And Perplexity.ai will do this for you, right? If you just ask for the reference, right? Ask for references, then you can use the article it refers to, right, and find relevant quotations in the article it's referred to.
Thank you, Prof, for that. I think Caroline is satisfied with the answers to the question. But I also just wanted to ask, maybe possibly if there are any other sort of besides the declaration that you have just told us of when students are submitting that they have to submit together with their thesis or with their dissertation, or even if it's a research report. And I think that is also extended to assignment and other sorts of assessments. But I wanted to ask if there's any other sort of policies that governs this use of these large language models, generative AI as a whole that you can maybe turn our attention to if you have knowledge of any, within our institute.
There's an AI policy now. It's quite new. I don't have a copy to share with you now, but it is online. So there is an AI policy, and that policy doesn't preclude you from using artificial intelligence. It just provides some guidelines on how you're supposed to deal with that. I'm sure if you just Google for UJ AI policy, it will come up.
All right. No, thank you, Prof, for that. Yeah, I think maybe.
Let me just do that out of curiosity. Okay. UJ AI policy. Yeah, artificial intelligence and generative AI policy, UJ Press. If you just type in UJ AI policy, then it comes up straight away. It's the first thing on the Google hit list.
Okay. No, thank you, Prof, for sharing that with us. I see on the chat, this must be Gloria. May I please get the recording of this presentation? Network problems. Okay. No, I think all the both after the session, Prof will send us his slides that he used for the presentation. Then together with the recording from for the session, we will upload that on our Moodle platforms after just checking for suitability. Then we upload them on our Moodle communities. If you are enrolled on the Moodle communities, you'll be able to access the recordings and even also resources from the past workshops and events that we have held in the previous years, including this year. So we will indeed share that with you. If you are not enrolled, that you are doing, enrolled at master's level, just say master's. If it's master's by research, if it's by coursework, master's by coursework, PhD, then you provide us with your student number. We will enroll you to the Moodle community so that you can also access these resources and also our announcements that we make in pertaining workshops that we hold and other services that we offer as the research capacity development unit. Prof, I thank you so much for a very insightful presentation. And to our participants, I don't see any questions. I don't see any virtual hands. So I think we are now going to the phase of closing this session. But I want to remind you that I've posted the feedback survey on the chat box for access. Please complete it for us. We use it for both feedback purposes as well as for future preparations, and just also feedback as well for the facilitator who have took time to prepare and facilitate the session for today. So I also want to remind you of that. We launched the research capacity development management system, the RCDMS. So we are migrating. So all these events will now be accessed on one platform. So we'll be only using the RCDMS in future to organize and for your access for events and workshops, and also the certificate of attendance that we generate manually now. When we are now registered on the system, you'll be able to just download it after attending a particular event. So I encourage you to register for that. We have RCDMS roadshows on the three campuses, Banting Road, APK, and the Bloemfontein campus at DFC. So we, on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, on one of the campuses, we do put an announcement notifying that one of our colleague, Mr. Lawrence Asani, will be stationed at the library of one of those institutions, one of those campuses, sorry, on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday to help people to register on RCDMS on site. All right. So I thank you once again for taking your time, and for being participant in this session. And to Prof, thank you so much for agreeing and taking your time to facilitate the session for today. And with this, with your permission, Prof, we can maybe go on to the phase of closing the session.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks everyone for coming. Thank you to the organizers. And this RCD project's coming along nicely. Well done.
All right, thank you so much, Prof. I know we also are really grateful for your support, and we know that in future, if we have anything of this sort, we will be in touch with you, for your assistance, and we really value that kind of cooperation, and also to the participants. There are some names that we are now familiar with. We know that almost every event or workshop that we hold, you are part of us. So we thank you for that continued support for the RCD unit. And I wish you all a great day.
Okay, take care. Have a great day, everyone.
Yes, I'll stop the recording and end the event. Thank you.